My mother kicked me out to give my room to my pregnant stepsister, but when my grandparents showed up, they revealed the house was never hers, and now she's begging on the streets while I live in her house. I'm 19 years old. I study business administration and work part-time at a coffee shop near campus. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened last year still has me processing a lot of things. Basically, my mom and stepdad kicked me out of the house when I was 18, right before my final exams, to give my room to my pregnant half-sister. And it turns out the house wasn't even theirs, but belonged to my maternal grandparents, who I had never met in my entire life. But let me start from the beginning, because this story is way more complicated than it seems. My mom, Kimberly, had my sister Alexis when she was in college, like 20 years old or something. Alexis's dad was Patrick, her boyfriend back then. But from what I was told later, things didn't work out and they broke up. Though they stayed friends because they had to raise Alexis together, co-parenting or whatever that's called. Later, my mom met my biological father, Alexander. They got married and everything seemed to be going well. But here's where it gets messed up. My mom never stopped seeing Patrick because they shared custody of Alexis, and at some point they started having an affair. I mean, my mom was married to my dad but was seeing Patrick on the side, and basically I'm a product of that time because my mom got pregnant with me while she was still with my dad but also seeing Patrick. I never knew if my biological dad knew that I wasn't his daughter. The truth is, he died when I was 7 months old in a car accident, so I could never ask him. But I guess my mom deceived him completely. After my dad died, my mom married Patrick almost immediately, like the next year, I think. And technically, Patrick is my biological father, although he never treated me like his daughter. I was always like the extra kid in the house while Alexis was his princess. I grew up knowing there was something weird about my family, but I didn't know exactly what. I just felt like I didn't quite fit in. Patrick was never affectionate with me, never called me daughter or anything, always called me by my name and kept his distance. And my mom didn't do much to improve the situation either. Alexis, who's 6 years older than me, didn't treat me like a sister either, more like I was a nuisance she had to tolerate. What I didn't know at the time, and what I found out much later, is that my maternal grandparents, my mom's parents, were completely against Patrick from the beginning. Apparently, Patrick had serious drug problems when he was younger, like he had been in rehab and everything, and my grandparents didn't want my mom to be with him. When my mom decided to marry Patrick after my dad died, my grandparents gave her an ultimatum like, either Patrick or us, and my mom chose Patrick. She cut off contact with her own parents completely, didn't allow them to see Alexis and me, nothing. I grew up not knowing I had living grandparents on my mom's side. I thought they had died or something, because nobody talked about them. Things at home were always weird but got worse when I entered high school. Alexis was already in college, studying I don't know what, graphic design I think, and lived at home, but basically did whatever she wanted. I, on the other hand, had to follow a bunch of stupid rules, super early curfews, couldn't go out with friends, had to do all the household chores, while Alexis did nothing. Patrick worked in construction and my mom was an administrative assistant in an office. We had enough money to live well, but we weren't rich or anything. The house where we lived was nice, 3 bedrooms, a decent yard, in a quiet neighborhood. But I always felt it wasn't really my home, because nobody treated me like part of the family. Like 6 years ago, when I was 13, there was a strange moment I didn't understand until much later. An older couple showed up at the house door, and my mom let them in, but I heard them arguing in the living room. Later I found out they were my grandparents, that they had bought the house where we lived and had given it to my mom hoping that would fix their relationship, like as a peace gesture or that they wanted to be in our lives again. But my mom basically kicked them out, told them she didn't need anything from them and to leave. I only saw 2 older people leaving the house crying, and my mom afterwards closed the door and acted like nothing had happened. She never explained to me who they were, and when I asked, she told me they were annoying salespeople and to go to my room. Fast forward to like 2 years ago, when I was 17, and in my senior year of high school. Alexis, who was already 23, was still living at home, without paying rent or anything. Worked part-time at a clothing store, but basically my parents paid for everything. I was applying to colleges and had good grades. Thought maybe I could get a scholarship because I knew my parents weren't going to pay for my college. They had never saved anything for me or mentioned helping me. My mom always said things like, well, when you turn 18, you're an adult and you have to support yourself. But she never said that to Alexis, even though she was already over 20 years old. Things exploded last year, right when I turned 18. Alexis announced she was pregnant. I don't know who the baby's father was because she never had a serious relationship that I knew of, but my parents were super excited, like it was the first grandchild and the whole thing. I was in my last semester of high school. There were like 3 weeks left until my final exams that were basically going to determine if I got the scholarship I needed for college. And one night I came home from studying at the library, and my mom and Patrick were waiting for me in the living room with all my stuff packed in boxes. My mom told me, "Madison, we need you to leave. Alexis needs your room for the baby, and we don't have space for both of you." I just stood there like, "What? Are you kicking me out?" And Patrick said, "You're 18 years old now. It's time for you to be independent. Alexis needs your room." I tried to explain to them that I had exams in 3 weeks, that I had nowhere to go, that I didn't even have a job yet because I had been focused on school, but my mom just kept saying I was an adult and had to figure things out on my own. Alexis was there too. In her room next door, I guess, because I heard her laugh when I started crying. I asked them, "Are you really going to do this to me? Right now, before my finals?" And my mom said something I'll never forget. She said, "Your sister needs the space. She's real family, and you're already old enough to take care of yourself." I mean, she basically told me I wasn't real family to them. Patrick just stood there with his arms crossed saying nothing, and then added, "You have until tomorrow morning to get your stuff out. If you don't, I'm going to throw it in the street." I called my best friend, Emma, crying, and she told me to come to her house immediately. Her parents, who had always been super good to me, let me stay in their guest room without asking questions. Emma's parents even went to my house the next day to pick up the rest of my stuff, because I didn't want to see my mom again. My mom gave them the boxes without saying anything, didn't even ask how I was or where I was going to go, literally acted like I had never existed. I ended up living with Emma and her family for almost a full year. I managed to take my final exams despite everything. Didn't get the grades I expected, but they were enough to get a partial scholarship at a state university. I took out a student loan to cover the rest and got a job at the campus coffee shop to pay my expenses. Emma's parents didn't charge me rent, but I insisted on helping with food and utility costs. I didn't want to be a burden on them. During all that time, neither my mom nor Patrick nor Alexis communicated with me even once. 0 messages, 0 calls, nothing. I was like I had died to them. Like 10 months went by like that. Me studying and working, trying to build my life without them. And then suddenly I started receiving emails from my mom. The first one said something like, "Hi Madison, I hope you're doing well. We miss you and want to know how you're doing." I read it and thought, really? After almost a year you write me like nothing happened? I didn't respond. She kept sending emails every week, always very casual like, "Hey, we should meet up soon," or, "It would be nice if you came for dinner someday." She never apologized for kicking me out, never acknowledged she had done anything wrong, just acted like everything was normal, and I had decided to leave on my own. I told Emma and her parents about the emails, and they told me to be careful, that my mom probably wanted something. And they were right, because like a month after the emails started, my mom sent me a longer one saying that Alexis had had the baby, and that they wanted me to be part of my nephew's life, that family had to be together and all that garbage. She didn't even mention the fact that she had kicked me out of the house when I needed her most, just expected me to show up like nothing had happened. I responded with a curt email saying I wasn't interested in having contact with them and to leave me alone. After that, she stopped writing for a while. Things changed completely like 3 months ago, right before the new semester started. I got a call from an unknown number and almost didn't answer because I thought it was spam, but something told me to answer. It was an older woman with a kind voice who asked me, "Are you Madison?" When I said yes, she started crying and told me, "I'm your grandmother, your mom's mom, your grandfather, and I have been looking for you for a long time." Honestly, I thought it was a scam or something weird at first, but she kept talking and told me things that only someone from the family could know. She told me that she and my grandfather had been separated from my mom for years because they didn't approve of her relationship with Patrick, but that they had always wanted to meet me and have a relationship with me. She told me about the day they bought the house where my family lived, 6 years ago, and how my mom rejected them even after that gesture. She told me they had tried to contact my mom many times, but she always blocked them and denied them any access to her granddaughters. My grandmother explained that like 2 months ago, my grandfather had a health problem. Nothing super serious, but it was a scare that made them think about mortality and fixing things with the family. They decided to go to the house again to try to talk to my mom one last time. When they arrived, my mom received them but not very enthusiastically. And during the conversation, my grandmother asked about me, said she wanted to meet her two granddaughters. And my mom, without thinking much about it, said something like, "Oh, Madison doesn't live here anymore. She left a while ago. She's at university or something." As if I had decided to move out on my own. But my grandfather, who's a retired lawyer and has always been very perceptive according to what my grandmother told me, noticed something weird about the way my mom said it. He asked her directly, "When did Madison leave? Is she okay? Why did she leave?" And my mom started getting nervous and defensive. Said that I had wanted to become independent and that it was normal at my age. But Alexis, who was there with the baby, blurted out something like, "Oh, Mom, just tell them you kicked her out to give me the room. It's not a big deal." She said it like that, super casual, as if kicking out your 8-year-old daughter before her final exams was the most normal thing in the world. My grandmother told me that at that moment, my grandparents got furious. They demanded my mom tell them the whole truth, and basically they found out that they had kicked me out when I was 18, that they had cut off all contact with me, that they didn't even know where I was living or how I was supporting myself. My grandfather reminded my mom that the house where they lived had been bought by them, that technically the house was in my grandparents' name because they had never done the official property transfer because my mom had cut off contact right after they gave it to her. My mom apparently didn't know this, thought the house was already hers. My grandmother told me, "Madison, your grandfather and I want to meet you and we want to help you with whatever you need, and we also want you to know that you have options regarding the house." She explained that legally they were the owners of the property, and that they could ask my mom to leave if I wanted. She asked me, "What do you want us to do? Do you want to leave things as they are, or do you want your mom and her family to leave the house?" Honestly, I didn't know what to answer at the moment. It was too much information at once. Like I had just found out that I had grandparents who wanted to meet me, that my mom had lied to and manipulated them for years, that the house where I grew up technically wasn't my mom's, and that I had the power to decide if my family stayed there or not. I told my grandmother I needed time to think. I talked to Emma and her parents, who had already become like my real family after everything they had done for me. Emma's parents told me to do what I felt was right for me, but not to feel guilty about protecting myself. Emma told me directly, "Madison, they kicked you out without thinking twice. You don't owe them anything. Do what's best for you." I called my grandparents 2 days later and told them yes, I wanted to meet them, that I'd like to have a relationship with them, and regarding the house, I told them my mom and her family could leave. I know it sounds harsh, and I know there are people who are going to think I'm vindictive or whatever, but the truth is they put me on the 2 street when I was 18 years old without caring if I had food or shelter, and now it turns out it wasn't even their house to begin with. My grandmother told me she completely understood my decision and that they were going to proceed with the eviction. My grandparents gave my mom an official notice that they had to vacate the property in 30 days. Apparently, my mom went into total panic, started calling my grandparents screaming and threatening lawsuits, but my grandfather, being a lawyer, knew exactly what to do and had all the papers in order. The house had always been in their name. There was never a property transfer, so legally they had every right to ask them to leave. My mom somehow got my email again and sent me a horrible message. It said things like I was a selfish and ungrateful person, that she had raised me and this is how I repaid her, that she wished I had died with my dad when I was a baby because she didn't deserve to have such a terrible daughter as me. That email hurt me a lot. I'm not going to lie. But it also confirmed that I had made the right decision because what kind of mother tells her daughter she wishes she had died? The eviction process took like a month and a half total. During that time, my grandparents and I started getting to know each other. They live in a city like 2 hours from my university, so we'd see each other on weekends. They're incredible people. I mean, my grandmother is a retired teacher, and my grandfather, as I said, is a retired lawyer, and both are super warm and caring in a way I never experienced with my mom. They told me stories about my mom when she was a child, showed me photos I had never seen, explained to me the whole story of Patrick and why they were so against that relationship from the beginning. It turns out Patrick not only had drug problems, he also had a domestic violence record with his ex-girlfriend before my mom, and my grandparents were afraid he would hurt my mom or us. My mom never told us any of that, I guess because she didn't want to admit her parents were right. Patrick apparently had been clean for many years, but my grandparents never trusted him, and honestly, I understand why. He was always a cold and controlling guy. My mom, Patrick, Alexis, and the baby had to move out of the house. I don't know where they went. Probably to an apartment or something. But honestly, I don't care. My grandparents offered me to move in with them to the house, and after thinking about it, I accepted. It was weird at first being in the house where I grew up, but without my mom and her family there. But I also felt a kind of relief, like I could finally breathe. It took almost 2 months to arrange everything, clean up their stuff, and make the house my home again. But now I live there with my grandparents. I still go to the university that's 2 hours away, but now I have a real home to return to. My grandparents don't charge me rent, obviously, but I keep working because I want to contribute and have my own money. Emma and her parents are still an important part of my life. In fact, my grandparents invited them to Thanksgiving dinner last month, and it was super nice to have all my real family together. My mom has sent me like 3 more emails since then, all saying I'm a bad person and that I ruined her life. Alexis also sent me a text message from an unknown number, saying that because of me, her son was going to grow up in a small apartment instead of a nice house. I haven't responded to either of them, and don't plan to. My grandparents told me they'll probably keep trying to contact me, but that I have every right to ignore them. Last week, my little cousin, the son of my grandfather's brother, asked me if I was happy living with my grandparents. I told him yes, that for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly home. He's like 8 years old and told me, "It's good that you're here. The house feels happier with you." And that made me realize that despite everything horrible that happened, maybe things ended the way they were supposed to end. You know, with the people who really love me and value me.